The USS Vigilant drifted silently through the void, its hull gleaming under the distant light of Arcturus. Commander Alan Peters stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back as he gazed at the main view screen. The massive starship had been traveling for 3 weeks to reach this position, and now they were finally here, at the edge of a region where 2 of the galaxy's oldest civilizations were about to conduct what Earth had been told were routine military exercises. "Cloaking systems functioning at optimal levels, Commander," Lieutenant Kate Miller reported from her tactical station. Her voice carried a hint of tension that Peters recognized all too well. "We're effectively invisible to both the Zentai and Varaxian sensor arrays." Peters nodded, his expression remaining neutral despite the gravity of their mission. "Maintain our position, Lieutenant Wright. I want us exactly 18 light minutes from the projected exercise zone." Navigational Officer Samantha Wright's fingers moved across her console with practiced precision. "Holding position, sir. We're exactly where we need to be." The bridge fell silent as the crew focused on their tasks. The USS Vigilant, with its crew of 120, represented the pinnacle of human engineering, a reconnaissance vessel designed for extended covert operations. Yet Peters knew that compared to the ships they were about to observe, the Vigilant was little more than a child's toy. Communications Officer Jack Howard swiveled in his chair. "Commander, I've detected the first signals. Both fleets are moving into position." "On screen," Peters ordered. The view screen flickered, and the bridge crew collectively held their breath. In the distance, massive shapes began to emerge from what appeared to be artificially generated wormholes. First came the Zentai vessels, sleek, crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them, some nearly the size of Earth's moon. Following them were the Varaxian ships, darker, more angular constructs that pulsed with a reddish energy that Science Officer Diane Carter had spent years trying to understand. "My God," whispered Chief Engineer Paul Davis, who had come to the bridge specifically to witness this moment. The reports didn't do them justice, Peters silently agreed. Earth had been aware of these species for barely 30 years, making contact only after humans developed their first functional faster-than-light drive. The Zentai and Varaxians had been spacefaring for millennia, their civilizations ancient when humans were still figuring out how to make fire. "All sensors recording," Carter confirmed, her eyes wide with scientific wonder. "We're capturing everything. Energy signatures, communication patterns, propulsion metrics." Peters nodded, then turned to address the bridge crew. "I want to remind everyone of our mission parameters. We are here to observe only. Under no circumstances are we to reveal our presence or interfere with the exercises." Earth Command was explicit. "We need this intelligence to understand where humanity stands in the galactic community." What he didn't say, what everyone already knew, was that Earth desperately needed to know if these ancient species posed a threat. Humanity's expansion into the stars had been rapid, but limited to a handful of nearby systems. The Zentai and Varaxians controlled territories spanning thousands of light years. "Sir," Miller spoke up, her brow furrowed as she studied her console. "I've been reviewing the intelligence briefing again. Something doesn't add up." Peters moved to her station. "Explain." "These exercises have been publicized across all the major galactic channels. Both species have invited observers from several allied races." Miller looked up at him. "Yet they specifically excluded Earth from the official observer list. We're here only because we have cloaking technology they don't know about. Your point, Lieutenant? Why invite some observers but exclude others? And why position their fleet so close to a neutral zone boundary? It feels staged." Peters had been having similar thoughts but had kept them to himself. "Continue monitoring. If anything seems off, I want to know immediately." Over the next 6 hours, the alien vessels arranged themselves in complex formations. The crew of the Vigilant watched in fascination as ships larger than anything humanity had ever built moved with impossible grace. "They're beginning," Howard announced. On the screen, the first simulated attacks began. Beams of energy that defied proper classification cut through space, Shields flared and shimmered, absorbing impacts that would have instantly vaporized Earth's most powerful warships. "Carter, are you seeing this?" Peters asked, his voice low. The science officer nodded, her face illuminated by the data streaming across her station. "The energy output is... I don't even have a proper comparison. One of those battleships could power all of Earth for a century with what they're expending on a single volley." Young Ensign Greg Taylor, monitoring the long-range sensors, suddenly straightened. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual activity at the edge of the Zentai formation." "Define unusual, Ensign." 3 vessels breaking formation. They appear to be moving toward an empty section of space. Taylor's fingers danced across his console. "There's some kind of energy buildup I can't identify." Carter moved to his station, studying the readings. "That's not part of any exercise. Protocol I've studied. They're powering up something massive." Peters felt a chill run down his spine. "Miller, recalibrate our sensors to focus on that area. Davis, make sure our cloaking system is functioning at maximum efficiency." "Already on it, sir," Davis replied, his fingers flying over the engineering console. The atmosphere on the bridge grew tense as the crew watched the 3 Zentai vessels form a triangular pattern. "They're generating some kind of field," Carter reported, her voice betraying her excitement despite the potential danger. "It's unlike anything I've seen before." Peters moved to the center of the bridge. "This doesn't look like any war game I've ever studied." "Right, be prepared to move us to a safer distance." "Aye, sir, plotting potential withdrawal vectors." Before Wright could finish, a blinding flash erupted from the triangle of Zentai ships. The view screen automatically dimmed to protect the crew's vision. "What the hell was that?" Peters demanded. Carter was frantically analyzing the data. "They've created some kind of spatial distortion. It's affecting the fabric of space-time in that region." A moment later, the ship shuddered violently. "Report." Peters called out, steadying himself against his chair. Davis's face paled as he checked his readings. "We've been hit by some kind of shockwave. Commander, our cloaking system is fluctuating. We're becoming visible." Peters felt his heart drop. "Restore it now." "I'm trying, but the system wasn't designed to withstand this kind of spatial distortion." On the view screen, both alien fleets had stopped their exercises. Several vessels had turned toward the Vigilance. "Position." "They've detected us," Miller confirmed, her voice steady despite the danger. "Multiple targeting systems are locking onto our position." Peters took a deep breath. In that moment, he knew their mission had just changed drastically. What had been a simple reconnaissance operation was about to become something much more dangerous and potentially far more important for humanity's future. "All hands to battle stations," he ordered, his voice calm despite the circumstances. "It seems our observation mission has just become a fight for survival." The bridge of the USS Vigilant erupted into controlled chaos as warning lights flashed red across every console. Commander Peters gripped the arms of his command chair, his mind racing through their limited options. "Status of the alien fleets?" he demanded. Lieutenant Miller's hands flew over her tactical display. "The Zentai vessels are breaking formation. 3 of their destroyer-class ships are moving directly toward our position." "And the Varaxians?" "They appear confused, sir. Their formation is holding, but they're powering up weapon systems." "Jack?" Howard looked up from his communications station, his expression grim. "Sir, I'm intercepting transmissions between the fleets. The encryption is heavy, but I'm picking up patterns consistent with accusations." "Accusations?" Peters leaned forward. "Based on the transmission patterns, it seems the Zentai believe we're Varaxian spies. They think the Varaxians planted us here to observe their new weapon test." Science Officer Carter was still analyzing the energy readings from the alien weapon demonstration. "Commander, what they just tested wasn't a conventional weapon. The energy signatures suggest it's designed to create localized disruptions in space-time." "In simple terms, please," Peters said, his eyes fixed on the approaching Zentai vessels. "It could potentially destabilize a star system. If deployed near a sun, it might trigger premature nova events." A heavy silence fell over the bridge as the implications sank in. "This wasn't a war game," Peters said quietly. "It was a weapons test disguised as a military exercise." "Sir," Miller interjected. We need to leave. Now. We're outgunned by factors I can't even calculate. Peters nodded. Right. Plot us a course out of here. Maximum speed. Navigational Officer Wright's fingers danced across her console. Course. Plotted, sir. But with the cloaking system damaged, we'll be visible the entire way out. They'll be able to track us easily. Chief Engineer Davis looked up from where he was frantically working to restore the cloaking system. The spatial distortion affected our phase modulators. I need at least 20 minutes to get the cloak back online. We don't have 20 minutes, Peters said grimly, watching as the alien ships continued their approach. Suddenly the ship rocked, violently as a warning shot from one of the Zentai vessels passed across their bow. Shields down to 87% from just the energy wash of that shot, Miller reported. A direct hit would cut straight through us. Peters made a quick decision. Right, don't take us out yet. Keep us just beyond their optimal weapons range. Sir? Wright questioned, her hands hovering over the controls. If we run, they'll catch us. And if what Carter says is true, we need to get this information back to Earth. Peters stood and moved to the center of the bridge. Howard, keep monitoring those transmissions. I want to know what they're saying to each other. Howard nodded, pressing his earpiece closer. The volume of communications just spiked, sir. The Varaxians are demanding to know why these Zentai are breaking formation and approaching us. As if in response to Howard's report, the view screen showed the Varaxian fleet also breaking formation, with several ships moving to intercept the Zentai vessels. They don't trust each other, Miller observed. The peace between them has always been fragile. Peter saw an opportunity. Carter, analyze everything you can about that weapon. Davis, focus on getting our engines to full capacity. We may not be able to hide, but we need to be able to run when the time comes. Commander, Ensign Taylor called out from his sensor. Station, the Varaxians have launched what appear to be scout ships. They're on an intercept course with the Zentai vessels headed our way. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. On the view screen, they could see energy weapons beginning to charge on both sets of alien ships. Howard's eyes widened as he listened to the transmissions. Sir, the Zentai commander just accused the Varaxians of treaty violations. He's claiming, the Varaxians knew about the weapons test and sent us to spy on it. And the Varaxians? Peters asked. They're denying everything and demanding the Zentai stand down. Howard paused, listening intently. Sir, I think... He never finished his sentence. A brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the lead Zentai ship, striking one of the approaching Varaxian scouts. The smaller vessel simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant. They've opened fire, Miller stated unnecessarily, her voice tight. The response was immediate. The entire Varaxian fleet began to move, weapons charging across hundreds of ships. This is going to be a full-scale battle, Peters realized. Right, keep us at the edges. Miller, passive scans only. I don't want to draw any more attention than necessary. Carter looked up from her science station. Commander, if they start using more of those spatial distortion weapons, we could be caught in effects we can't predict or survive. Peters nodded grimly. Noted. But we're not leaving, yet. Miller approached him, speaking quietly. Sir, with respect, our orders were to observe and retreat if detected. We've been detected. The mission parameters have changed, Lieutenant, Peters replied. We just witnessed the test of a weapon that could threaten Earth itself. If either of these species decided to use it against human settlements, he left the thought unfinished. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as more energy beams crisscrossed the space between the alien fleets. The Varaxians were now fully engaged, their larger battleships moving into offensive positions. What had minutes ago been an organized military exercise had devolved into what looked like the opening salvos of a war. Sir, Miller said slowly, an idea forming. If they're focused on fighting each other, Peters caught her meaning immediately. Then we have an opportunity, not to run but to gather intelligence. Exactly, Miller nodded. We could learn more about their weapons, shields, tactics, everything Earth needs to know if we ever have, to face either species. Davis looked up in alarm. That's incredibly risky, Commander. So is leaving now with only half the information we need, Peters countered. He turned to address the entire bridge. Listen up. Our mission has changed. We're going to use this confusion to our advantage. The ship rocked again as a stray energy beam passed nearby, the battle intensifying with each passing second. Right. Plot us a course that keeps us at the periphery of the battle. Miller, I want every sensor we have recording everything. Weapons, capabilities, shield frequencies, response times, all of it. Peters turned to Howard. And keep monitoring those communications. I want to know the moment either side realizes we're still here. The faces of his crew showed a mixture of fear and determination. They all understood the stakes. This was no longer just about completing a mission. It was about humanity's future. Davis, Peters added, forget the cloaking system for now. Focus on keeping our shields and engines at maximum. We're going to need both. As the Vigilant began to maneuver cautiously around the expanding battle, Peters returned to his command chair. The view screen displayed destruction on a scale no human had ever witnessed firsthand. Ships larger than cities engaging with weapons that could shatter planets. Send a tight beam transmission to Earth Command, Peters ordered Howard. Tell them the situation has changed. What was supposed to be a simulated battle has become very real, and it could change everything. The USS Vigilant shuddered as another shockwave from the alien battle washed over its hull. Commander Peters gripped his chair as the lights flickered briefly. Shields holding at 63%, Lieutenant Miller reported, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding on the view screen. The battle between the Zentai and Varaxians had escalated dramatically. Massive ships exchanged fire with weapons that bent light and warped space itself. Right. Adjust course, Peters ordered. Keep us behind that debris field from the destroyed Varaxian cruiser. Navigational Officer Wright's hands moved with precision across her console. Course adjusted, sir. The debris should mask some of our energy signature. For the past hour, the Vigilant had been dancing along the edges of the battle, gathering invaluable data while trying to avoid direct attention. So far, the alien forces seemed too focused on destroying each other to pay much attention to the small human vessel. Sir, Science Officer Carter called from her station, I'm detecting patterns in their attack sequences. The Zentai ships follow highly organized geometric formations, while the Varaxians use more fluid, adaptive patterns. Peters moved to her station, studying the tactical display. Are there any weaknesses we can identify? Carter nodded, her eyes never leaving the stream of data. Both species rely heavily on predictive algorithms for targeting and defense. Their computers anticipate standard evasive maneuvers and adjust accordingly. Standard by whose definition? Peters asked. By the established norms of space combat. Developed over their thousands of years of warfare, Carter explained. Their tactics are highly evolved but also rigid in some ways. Ensign Taylor, who had been quietly monitoring sensor data at his station, suddenly spoke up. Sir, I've noticed something odd about their targeting systems. Peters turned to the young officer. Go on, Ensign. Taylor's fingers danced across his console, bringing up a series of data patterns. When that Varaxian destroyer nearly hit us, 15 minutes ago, Wright performed that emergency roll and dive maneuver, the one that almost made me lose my lunch, Chief Engineer Davis commented from his station. Exactly, Taylor continued. I've analyzed their targeting response. They completely lost lock on us for nearly 12 seconds. It was as if they couldn't compute our trajectory. Miller joined them, studying Taylor's data. He's right, Commander. Look at these reaction times. When we follow conventional evasive patterns, they track us almost instantly. But when Wright improvised that unusual maneuver, they couldn't predict where we'd be. Peters finished, a slow realization dawning. Carter, you said they rely on predictive algorithms? Yes, sir. Both species have been fighting each other or other enemies for millennia. They've developed extensive libraries of tactical responses based on those experiences. But they've never encountered humans in combat before, Peters said thoughtfully. They have no baseline for how we might react under pressure. A sudden violent explosion on the view screen drew their attention. A Zentai battleship, at least 10 times the size of the Vigilant, split apart as multiple Varaxian energy beams converged on a single point. Their weapons are incredibly powerful, Miller observed, but they seem to require precise targeting and coordination. And their coordination is based on prediction, Peters said, the pieces falling into place. Right. I want you to start implementing non-standard evasive maneuvers. Nothing from the manual. I want creative, unpredictable patterns. Wright looked surprised but nodded. Yes, sir, I can do that. Miller, work with Taylor. I want a comprehensive analysis of their targeting delays when faced with unpredictable movements. As the officers returned to their stations, the ship rocked again, more violently this time. Direct hit on our port shield, Davis called out. Shield's down to 47%. A Varaxian cruiser has broken off from the main battle, Miller reported tensely. They're heading directly for us. Peters returned to his command chair. Wright, implement those unpredictable maneuvers now. Davis, give me everything you can on engines. The Vigilant suddenly lurched, rolling at an angle that defied conventional space tactics, then abruptly changed direction midway through the roll. On the view screen, the approaching Varaxian ship fired and missed completely. It worked, Taylor exclaimed. Their targeting systems are trying to predict where we should be based on the first half of our maneuver. Keep it up, Wright, Peters ordered. Don't establish any pattern they can lock onto. Wright nodded, her face showing intense concentration as she executed a series of maneuvers that would have failed any Academy flight test for their apparent randomness. Howard called out from communications. Sir, I've been analyzing their command. Transmissions. There's a 5-second delay between observed action and tactical response in their command structure. A decision-making lag, Miller interpreted. Their commanders need to process what they're seeing before issuing new orders, which gives us an advantage if we can act within that window, Peters said. Davis, what's the status of our main engines? Operating at 93%, sir. The modifications I made to the cooling systems are holding. Peters nodded. Good, because I need more from them. He turned to Miller. Lieutenant, I need options. We can't keep this dance up forever. Miller studied her tactical display. The battle has created several debris fields we could use as cover to make our way out of the system. But, she hesitated. But what? Peters prompted. Sir, we're gathering invaluable intelligence here. The kind Earth may never have another opportunity to acquire. If we leave now, Peters understood her concern. Their mission had evolved far beyond simple observation. What they were learning about these two dominant species could be crucial for humanity's future survival. Medical Officer Johnson to bridge, came a voice over the comm system. Commander, we have 12 injured crew members from that last hit, 3 with serious burns. The reality of their situation crashed back into focus. Peters made his decision. We stay for now, he said firmly, but we adapt our approach. He stood and addressed the bridge crew. Both alien species have technology far beyond ours. Their ships are bigger, their weapons more powerful. By all conventional metrics, we're hopelessly outmatched. He walked to the center of the bridge. But they've shown us something crucial today, something I suspect they don't even realize. Despite their advanced technology, they lack what humans have always relied on to survive: adaptability under pressure. Right? Continue your unpredictable maneuvers, but conserve power when possible. Miller, I want a continuous analysis of their response times to our movements. Carter, keep gathering data on their weapon systems. Davis, he turned to his chief engineer. I need you to find a way to make us even less predictable. Davis thought for a moment. I might be able to modify our shield harmonics to create false sensor readings, make us appear to be in slightly different positions than we actually are. Do it, Peters ordered. As the crew jumped into action with renewed purpose, Peters returned to his chair, watching the battle rage on the view screen. The stakes had never been higher, but for the first time since the mission began, he felt a glimmer of hope. The human capacity for improvisation, what might seem like chaos to these ancient, orderly species, could be the very thing that saved them, and perhaps, in the long run, all of humanity. 4 hours into the battle, the bridge of the USS Vigilant had settled into a strange rhythm of controlled chaos. Sweat beaded on Navigational Officer Wright's forehead as she executed yet another series of unpredictable maneuvers, keeping the ship just beyond the effective targeting range of both alien fleets. "Status report," Commander Peters called out, his voice rough from hours of issuing orders. "Shields at 39%, Chief Engineer Davis reported from his station. "I've rerouted power from non-essential systems, but we can't take another direct hit." Lieutenant Miller looked up from her tactical display. "The battle has spread across a quarter of the system now. The Zentai have lost approximately 21 vessels, the Varaxians 27, but they still have hundreds more engaged." "Any sign they've noticed our continued presence?" Peters asked. "Occasional attention," Miller replied. "But every time they try to target us, Wright's maneuvers and Davis's shield modifications throw them off." Communications Officer Howard suddenly straightened in his chair. "Commander, I'm detecting a new transmission pattern from Earth Command. They're responding to our emergency signal." Peters felt a surge of hope. "Put it through." Howard worked his console. "It's heavily encrypted. Decoding now." The bridge fell silent as Howard processed the transmission. Finally, he looked up, his expression grim. "Sir, Earth Command acknowledges our situation. They've ordered us to return immediately with all gathered intelligence." Howard hesitated. They're concerned that continued exposure risks not just the ship but the data we've collected. Peters nodded slowly, understanding the logic. What they had learned about the alien weapons' capabilities and tactical weaknesses was too valuable to risk losing. "There's more, sir," Howard continued. "Our quantum link to Earth is becoming unstable. The spatial distortions from the alien weapons are affecting subspace communications. We may lose contact completely within the next hour." Peters turned to Science Officer Carter. "Can we get out of here? Do we have enough data to make this worthwhile?" Carter nodded decisively. "We've recorded terabytes of tactical information, weapons signatures, and shield frequencies. Most importantly, we've confirmed the vulnerability in their predictive targeting systems." She looked at Peters directly. "It's more than we could have hoped for, sir." Peters made his decision. "Right? Plot us a course out of this system, maximum speed." He turned to Miller. "What's our clearest path?" Miller studied her tactical display. "The battle has shifted mostly toward the inner system. Our best escape vector is toward the outer planets, then a jump to hyperspace once we're clear of the gravity well." "Make it happen," Peters ordered. Wright began plotting the course while Davis prepared the engines for maximum output. The plan was set until a massive explosion rocked the view screen. A Zentai dreadnought, one of the largest ships in their mob fleet, had just been destroyed by what appeared to be another spatial distortion weapon. "New problem," Carter called out urgently. "The destruction of that dreadnought has created a level 3 spatial rift directly in our planned escape path. Can we go around it?" Peters asked. Wright shook her head. "Not without moving closer to the main battle." Peters stared at the tactical display, weighing their options. Every path out now seemed blocked by either alien vessels or dangerous spatial anomalies. "Sir," Miller said quietly, "we could try something else." She hesitated, then continued. "Rather than trying to sneak away unnoticed, we could make ourselves very noticed, but in a way that helps us escape." Peters raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening, Lieutenant. The Zentai and Varaxians are already suspicious of each other. We could use that." Miller's fingers moved over her console, bringing up a tactical simulation. "If we modify our communications array to broadcast on their frequencies, we could send spoofed command signals, making each side think the other is sending orders." Howard caught on quickly. "Exactly," Miller nodded. "We create further confusion between them, giving us a window to escape during the chaos." Davis looked skeptical. "Their encryption is incredibly complex. We've only been able to partially decode their communications." "We don't need perfect forgeries," Miller countered. "Just enough to cause doubt and hesitation in their command structure. Remember the 5-second lag Howard identified? We exploit that." Peters considered the plan. It was bold, perhaps even reckless. but their alternatives were dwindling by the minute. Howard, can you modify our comm array to broadcast on their frequencies? The communications officer nodded. Yes, sir. Using the patterns I've been monitoring, I can create convincing enough signals. And Miller, you'll craft the tactical orders designed to create maximum confusion? Already working on it, sir. Peters turned to young Ensign Taylor. Ensign, I need you to work with Howard. Find the optimal timing for these transmissions. Taylor's eyes widened at being given such responsibility, but he nodded firmly. Yes, sir. As the crew prepared the deception, Peters moved to the center of the bridge. Davis, what's the status of our main engines? Ready for maximum output, sir, but our jump drive needs 3 minutes to warm up once we clear the system's gravity well. 3 minutes where we'll be completely vulnerable, Peters noted grimly. Yes, sir, Davis confirmed. Peters took a deep breath. Then we make those 3 minutes count. Right, once we start broadcasting, I want you to take us out on this vector. He traced a path on her navigation console that threaded between two ongoing skirmishes. That's cutting it very close to that Varaxian destroyer, sir, Wright observed. Which is exactly why they won't expect it, Peters replied. Everyone, prepare for Operation Echo. The name had come to him suddenly. An echo of false commands bouncing between the alien fleets, creating a distraction for their escape. Howard, Miller, how long until you're ready? Miller looked up from her tactical station. Fabricated command. Sequences complete, sir. Comm array modified and ready, Howard reported. Peters returned to his command chair. On my mark, begin transmission. Right the moment we start broadcasting, execute our escape course. The bridge crew tensed, each officer focused intently on their station. 3, 2, 1. Mark. Howard's fingers flew across his console, initiating the broadcasts. Immediately, Wright sent the Vigilant surging forward on its escape vector, the engines roaring at maximum power. On the view screen, the effect was almost immediate. Several Zentai vessels abruptly changed formation, seemingly responding to new orders. Moments later, a group of Varaxian ships adjusted their positions as well, creating a momentary gap in their defensive line. It's working, Miller reported, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. Both fleets are showing signs of confusion in their command structure. Sir? Taylor called out. I'm detecting increased communications between their flagships. They're trying to verify the orders. Peters gripped his chair. How long before they realize they're being deceived? 40 seconds, maybe less, Howard estimated. Right? Push the engines beyond safety protocols, Peters ordered. We need to reach that gap before it closes. The Vigilant shot forward, threading the needle between massive alien warships, some of which were now firing on their own allies, due to the confusion. Sir, Miller called out, her voice tight with tension. We've been identified. 3 Zentai cruisers have broken off and are pursuing. Peters watched as the tactical display showed the alien vessels closing in behind them. If they caught the Vigilant before it cleared the gravity well and jumped to hyperspace, there would be no escape. This is Commander Peters to all hands. He broadcast throughout the ship. Prepare for emergency jump procedures. This is not a drill. As the Vigilant raced toward the edge of the system, pursued by ships that could destroy them with a single shot, Peters sent a final compressed data burst toward Earth using the last stable connection of their quantum link. Whether we make it back or not, he said quietly to himself, Earth will know what we discovered here today. 3 months passed with no word from the USS Vigilant. At Earth Space Force headquarters, Admiral Frank Nelson stood at the window of his office, staring at the distant stars. The data burst received from Commander Peters had been analyzed extensively, revealing crucial information about the Zentai and Varaxian technologies, tactics, and most importantly, their weaknesses. They're here, sir, his aide announced from the doorway. Nelson turned. Send them in. 4 high-ranking officers entered, each carrying data tablets. They were the heads of Earth's newly formed Tactical Response Division, created specifically to prepare humanity for potential conflicts with the advanced alien species. The simulations are complete, General Susan Adams reported without preamble. Using the data from the Vigilant, we've developed countermeasures that exploit the predictive weaknesses in their targeting systems. Nelson nodded. And the weapon they were testing? We've designed a detection grid that should give us early warning if spatial distortions of that magnitude appear anywhere near our colonies. Another officer responded. It's not enough, Nelson said quietly. We need more than just defensive measures. Sir, Adams hesitated, with all due respect, even with this new intelligence, we're still technologically outmatched by factors of hundreds, if not thousands. Nelson was about to respond when his communications officer burst into the room. Admiral, we're detecting a ship entering the solar system. It's... The young man paused, his voice breaking slightly. It's the Vigilant, sir. Nelson straightened. Confirmed? Yes, sir. IFF signal verified. They're damaged but under their own power. Current trajectory puts them near Neptune's orbit. The room erupted in controlled chaos as orders were issued to dispatch rescue vessels. Nelson stood still, processing the news. After 3 months, he had given up hope of ever seeing the reconnaissance ship again. 2 days later, Nelson stood in the observation room of the orbital medical facility above Earth. Through the window, he could see the USS Vigilant docked nearby, its hull scarred with damage unlike anything Earth's engineers had seen before. The door slid open, and Commander Alan Peters entered. He looked thinner with new lines etched into his face and a slight limp in his walk. Of the original crew of 120, only 47 had survived. Commander, Nelson greeted him, extending his hand. Welcome home. Peters shook it firmly. Thank you, Admiral. I apologize for the delay in our return. 3 months with no contact, Nelson said. We assumed the worst. We nearly didn't make it, Peters admitted. After we sent the data burst, our jump drive malfunctioned during the emergency activation sequence. The spatial distortions had affected it more than we realized. Nelson guided him to a seat. Tell me what happened. Peters took a deep breath. The Zentai cruisers were closing in. Lieutenant Miller had the idea to send one final set of false communications, making each alien fleet believe we were allied with their enemy. Bold move, Nelson commented. It worked, partially, Peters continued. The Zentai suddenly diverted, half their attention to the Varaxians, demanding to know why they had allied with the primitive species. The Varaxians, equally confused, made similar accusations. You played them against each other. Peters nodded. It bought us just enough time to reach the jump point, but when our drive malfunctioned, we were left with only minimal propulsion and severely damaged shields. We had to take refuge in an uncharted nebula for weeks while Chief Engineer Davis performed repairs. And the alien fleets? Last we observed, they had escalated to full-scale conflict across 3 star systems. Our little deception became the spark that ignited years of simmering tensions. Nelson processed this information. Your data burst has changed everything, Peters. Our engineers and tacticians have been working around the clock to integrate what you discovered. The human unpredictability factor, Peters said. Exactly. We've already redesigned our combat training programs to emphasize unpredictable maneuvers and non-standard responses. Nelson handed Peters a data tablet. This is the new tactical doctrine we're implementing across the fleet. Peters glanced at the title on the screen. The Vigilant Protocol. Your experience proved that despite our technological disadvantages, humans possess something these ancient species lack: creative adaptation under pressure, Nelson explained. We're now incorporating random variables into all our defense systems, making them inherently unpredictable. And the crew? Peters asked. The survivors? They'll be recognized as heroes, of course, Nelson assured him. Lieutenant Miller has already been promoted to commander. She'll be taking over the tactical division at the academy, teaching the next generation what you discovered. Peters smiled slightly. She deserves it. Her insights saved us more than once. A week later, Peters stood before a small group in a secure briefing room. Present were the highest officials of Earth government and military leadership. He had just finished presenting the full classified report of the Vigilance mission. So to summarize, the president of the United Earth Alliance said, "These advanced species have a critical weakness. They rely too heavily on predictive algorithms based on their long histories of warfare. Yes, Madam President, Peters confirmed. Both the Zentai and Varaxians have been spacefaring for thousands of years. They've developed highly sophisticated tactics, but they've also become rigid in their thinking. They expect enemies to behave according to established patterns. And humans don't follow those patterns, she concluded. We can't, Peters explained. We haven't been fighting in space long enough to develop those patterns. What they see as erratic, even chaotic behavior is actually our greatest strength. Admiral Nelson stepped forward. We've already begun implementing changes based on this intelligence. Our new ships are being designed with systems that incorporate deliberate randomness. Our training now emphasizes creative problem-solving over rote responses. The defense minister looked skeptical. Will this really be enough if they decide to turn their attention toward Earth? Peters and Nelson exchanged glances. There's more, Peters said. 3 days ago, we received transmissions from both species. They're requesting diplomatic meetings. The room fell silent. Both of them? The president asked. Separately? Yes, Nelson confirmed. And neither knows we're talking to the other. They're still at war with each other, but both have recognized that humans possess something different. They fear us, one official stated. Not fear exactly, Peters corrected. They're intrigued. Our actions during the battle demonstrated capabilities they didn't expect from, as they put it, such a young species. The president leaned forward. What are you suggesting, Commander? A diplomatic opportunity, Madam President. While they fight each other, we position ourselves as mediators. We leverage their new respect for human adaptability into favorable treaties with both sides. Playing both ends against the middle, the defense minister mused. Peters nodded. Exactly. And in the meantime, we continue building our defenses around the principles we discovered. 5 years later, Commander, now Captain, Peters stood on the bridge of Earth's newest vessel, the ESS Innovation. At twice the size of the Vigilant, it incorporated technologies gained through careful negotiations with both alien species. Lieutenant Miller, now a strategic advisor to Earth Command, stood beside him. The Zentai delegation arrives tomorrow, she remarked. The Varaxians the day after. Peters nodded. And neither knows the other is coming. You think this peace conference will actually work? She asked. It doesn't have to work perfectly, Peters replied. It just has to keep them focused on each other while we continue to grow stronger. He turned to look at the crew working on the bridge, humans going about their duties with the flexible, adaptive approach that had proven so valuable. What started as a simple observation mission changed everything, he said quietly. We went to learn about them, but ended up learning something more important about ourselves. Miller smiled. That in a galaxy of ancient, powerful species. Sometimes, the newest kid on the block has advantages the others have forgotten. Exactly, Peters agreed, watching as Earth's defense fleet conducted exercises outside, their movements deliberately unpredictable. Sometimes sending a starship to observe is all it takes to change the course of history.